Well, hello, that's me again. Today is February 15th. It is what, Wednesday, I guess, or Thursday, I don't know really. I'm lost in space and time. But let me start with revisiting the Sphere or Sphera project, and for you to understand how sometimes very in time things appear out of the blue, let me demonstrate to you this thing. These are the news from a very famous site in Russia, and it's obviously across the Russian media, and it is called the Сделано у нас, which is the made in Russia, essentially, that's what it means. And look at this. They show the installation of the nitrogen and other types of the serious gases used in the satellite construction. Huge towers, 20 meters, 65 feet tall, and this is the one of the satellite plants which is being constructed in, basically built in Sholkovo, not far from Moscow. And as you can see yourself, and you can go and look it up and at my blog and in YouTube. It is in Russian, however. It's a very large satellite manufacturing plant which is capable simultaneously to produce and test 4 heavy satellites and 100 smaller satellites. This what actually explains to you the situation with the satellites, the whole situation with the Starlink, and if there is a country which can beat Starlink and Musk and NASA, it's Russia. And as you can see yourself, it's the plant is almost ready, and it has to go into full production mode this year. So this is it. But this is not what I wanted to talk about. This was merely a reference to my previous video. I wanted to talk about the change of narrative, and the change of narrative about Ukraine and in reality about geopolitics in general is startling. For the last week, US media especially suddenly started to kind of, going down a little bit to our sinful earth, so to speak, and put at least the tip of their one foot on the ground, because they need to report now the situation which is happening in Ukraine. And if you look attentively at any kind of the news channels which are legitimate news channels, you will see yourself that Russia a long time ago recovered the area, so to speak, in terms of the square mileage. Which she not lost. Russians simply withdrew from Kupiansk and Red Liman, and then from Kherson. And you will understand that what is happening now in Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, is one of the finishing touches on the huge, up to 40 to 50, between 40 and 50 battalions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Actually, a lot of it is not even Ukrainian soldiers. Those are NATO soldiers from NATO countries, starting from Poland and Britain, United Kingdom, United States, what have you. So, and as Mr. Prigozhin, the big honcho of the now famous and notorious Wagner Group, stated today in Russian media, it's all about annihilation of the armed forces of Ukraine, whatever the remaining reserves, and tying the forces specifically around Bakhmut to allow the breakthroughs somewhere else, or just offensive. You don't need to have necessarily breakthroughs in this mode of operation, because it is all about culling, or cooling, if you wish, and annihilation of the mobilization potential of the not only Ukraine but NATO countries. And here we come to the subject matter here. And let's start with this thing. There is a guy, he's Alain Juillet, and he's a former big honcho of the French counterintelligence service, DGSE, and he's worked for the 3 governments, 3 prime ministers, including Dominique Villepin and Francois Fillon, and he stated in his interview on the 3 days ago that, well, 2 days ago, that all our investment in Ukraine is gone. It's a loss. And he's talking about French investment, which amounts to $7.5 billion euros, and he talks about the fact that it's over, guys. Basically, the Ukraine is done, and nothing we can do about it. And you can look up this interview. It was on the Voltaire, not Voltaire net. You can just simply type Alangia, and you will see yourself that you can use. It will give you immediately the link to the article and his interview, and it's also on YouTube, and you can always translate it using Google Translate. So they understand that. Not only they understand that, but we have obviously the USA Today now saying that, yeah, day before yesterday, that little by little they are winning tight turns in key Ukraine city. Live updates as Russian offensive begins. Well, a Russian offensive was, if you call it such, in progress for a while now. It's not about, as one friend of Larry Johnson, Mr. Helmholtz Smith says, about big arrows. Although there are arrows obviously on the maps, but it is about, as I already stated, systematic annihilation of the mobilization potential of both Ukraine and NATO, without which Ukraine as state cannot exist anymore. Everybody who is anybody admits this, and here we are. Even USA Today changes the narrative. Even British tabloids change the narrative. Suddenly, we have the situation that, oh my gosh, they are losing. Even people like that, they change the narrative. 4 days ago, Mr. Brandon Weichert, I don't know how to pronounce his name correctly, granted he, obviously, despite his as always impressive curriculum vitae, he not really big time geopolitical analyst, especially after he refers to Peter Zeihan, who is a shyster from geopolitics, but even he admits that breaking Russia more like breaking ourselves. America's days as primary player in Europe will close fast without a radical policy shift on Ukraine. Well, America cannot shift its policy on Ukraine because how to put it, you cannot exit this situation now without saving face. And this brings us to the other thing which I'm constantly on record. They simply cannot calculate that. They just not capable of calculating what they're dealing with. And to explain to you what we are dealing with, here it is. Look at this. Here is now the couple. They are married, I believe. This is MSNBC, and these are two clowns. One of them is Mr. Scarborough, who is talking too much and knows very little. He is a lawyer who used to be congressman, and this is his new wife. I think so. She is his new wife. Mike Brzezinski, the daughter of the guy who was himself a shyster from geopolitics, and the only thing he was trying to push through was, of course, Polish-centric policies and his hatred of Russia and Russians, not just of the Soviet Union, colored basically, if not to say shaped, a lot in American foreign policy, especially on the part of the Democratic Party. And here it is. Here's the two clowns. On the February 8th, they talk about how Poland is leading efforts to help Ukraine. Well, how Poland indeed is leading efforts to help Ukraine? Well, let me put it this way. Poland definitely supplies a lot of cannon fodder. There are numerous cemeteries now in Poland where the Polish guys died for nothing, and I mean they are buried there because they go to Ukraine. Many of them probably cadre officers and soldiers. They get killed in industrial quantities, and this is how the Scarborough and this Micah Brzezinski think that Poland helps Ukraine. No, this is not help. It's more cannon fodder, and it's addition to the historic trauma of Poland as such, which is many centuries old. But then, of course, they talk about how Poland may, supply tanks. And here's the issue, as I already stated, because they cannot calculate. They just cannot. I mean, evidently, even basic math is not present in policy making and decision making circles in the United States. And considering the fact, especially after the latest reports about, for example, schools in Illinois where the kids cannot do math and cannot read. So, and I'm talking about in mass. I'm talking about the trend. So it's not like here and there. We are talking about the complete devastation in educational sphere. I am on record that basically all of this humanities field in especially Ivy League is fraud. You have those good old boys who have connections in the Beltway. They're placed in those programs just to get some credentials, some degrees in some bullshit subject like political science, and that's why they cannot understand what they are dealing with. And here is a report. They're talking about Poland, and of course, judging by the GDP numbers, which are also fraud. GDP as a whole is absolutely fraudulent metric. And we can see that Poland wants to supply tanks, right? So, but before we go to Poland, let me explain to you something which is in Russian from 5 days ago. And Mr. Medvedev is being on Omsk, Omsk is one of the major Russian cities in Siberia, and huge industrial center which produces all kinds of things from missiles to electronic warfare technology. And look what he talks. He went to the Omsk tank plant, and he stated there, which is, as you can see yourself, underlined in red, that Russia is planning and Russia is doing to build and modernize thousands, like many thousands of tanks, while the enemy is begging for the armaments abroad, told Medvedev to the press and to people on this plant. And he spoke about this issue of the Ukraine, or whatever is left of it, begging for tanks, planes. Planes today have been denied officially across the board from Poland, which has the 50 modern planes, and other places. But let's go back to Poland. While Mr. Medvedev not just talks, it's happening right now as we speak, especially massive supplies of the brand new T-90 Prorыв T-90M, which is an excellent tank, and it's net-centric, and it arrives in industrial quantities now on the front, or to the front. We can take a look at this situation. I just, you know what, I didn't bother myself too much. I went directly for the jugular, which is of course the Wikipedia. And look at this. Here's the number of Polish tanks currently in Poland. And as you can see yourself, when you take a look at it, and when you take a look at the numbers, you will begin to understand that these all the dreams of the NATO people who do not understand, neither Micah Brzezinski or Joe Scarborough, nor political elites in Poland or in NATO, they understand actually what numbers are. And look at this. For example, you can take a look at K2 Black Panther. Oh yeah, a big time tank, right. So 180 K2s to be delivered between 22 and 25. So basically, there's very little delivery so far. In Abrams, 250 M1A2, SEP V3 on order, deliveries between 24-26. Okay, good luck with them. With that, then we take at the take a look at Leopard 2. Of the original 142 Leopards, 24 have been upgraded to Leopard 2PL standard. Okay, that's the only thing they have. And as you can begin to look at this, and especially PT-91 and T-72, most of them have been donated to Ukraine, and they have been annihilated already there. So in this particular case, if you look at the numbers, like 260 T-72s which have been destroyed already by Russians, it's, yeah, sure, let them supply whatever they want. Then we go into the numbers of the Polish Air Force. And if we take a look at what they have there, it's we have old MiG-29s, 29 of them. we have F-35, which is 32 on order, and we have 48 F-16s. That's pretty much it. That's the number of the combat aircraft Poland has, and even Mr. Duda stated yesterday that, no, we're not giving any planes to Poland, or I mean to Ukraine, pardon my French, and because we don't have enough ourselves. We have only 50 of the flying aircraft. So in this case, the statement that Poland is leading the effort in helping Ukraine with what? Pardon my French. Poland produces nothing of substance with the exception of some upgrades of tanks, which it used to have from the Soviet times, and some local model of the tank, which in itself is derivative of the Soviet tanks. With what will Poland help Ukraine? It has no economic, military, and industrial, what have you, capabilities to do so. And suddenly, Polish elite, and again, Mr. Duda, is beginning to say that, oh yeah, we don't have enough, we cannot supply that. Then we have the other people, Netherlands, then we have Belgium, which has 6 tanks and doesn't want to supply them. And of course, nobody now wants to supply any fighter planes, because what's the point? Yeah. Supply of 35, Russians will have fun shooting down those. I mean, so, and you begin to sense this change of narrative despite this utter BS, and it was the point of the complete embarrassment when Mr. Austin and Mr. Milley yesterday were trying to deliver the fact that Russians lost. Yeah, didn't you know that? Russians lost tactically, I'm quoting, tactically, operationally, and strategically. I never saw any kind of loss being defined in 3 times over annihilation of the enemy and gaining a lot of new territories. And I'm not talking about those 100,000 square kilometers which Russia obtained before by joining those 4 major regions like Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. But now Russians are moving ahead again, and they attacking, conducting their offensive, and are gaining every day territories. And this is not just about territory. This never was about territory. It was always about annihilating Ukraine as such, as the state, which is a neo-Nazi state. And my good friend and one of the most outstanding reporters of our time, Eva Bartlett, she continues to speak about what is going on there when she gets us to this type of the information. And 2 weeks ago, they still continue to unearth all those Nazi paraphernalia and Nazi symbols from all kinds of the what we'll call now today mass graves. This one is from Azov battalion in Mariupol. Then, of course, we have General Michael Flynn, who just plain simple went on record and said, yeah, just in case anyone is still confused about who we are arming in Ukraine. And here's Michael Flynn's demonstration of what and who United States and NATO are arming in Ukraine. This is American officers. You can have a great deal of degree of respect and professional admiration for saying things like they are. It is all about their Nazis and supporting them there. And in this case, you have to ask the question, what the hell they were thinking, those Micah Brzezinski and Mr. Scarborough. They didn't think, they don't have the instrument, the toolkit thinking about this, because you have to have a special background, you have to have special education to pass judgment, which is competent judgment. Anybody can pass judgment. It doesn't mean that they will be this judgment will be correct, but they continue to spew this BS. But as I already stated, in the last week or so, we saw a very dramatic change in the narrative, and suddenly narrative indeed changed. Suddenly we have Wall Street Journal, suddenly we have all kinds of people speaking about it, and even the people, some people like this guy from Washington Post, Mr. Wolfstall, whatever his name. He is the chair of the American Scientists, whatever the board which does this stupid doomsday clock, and he is, he is speaking in Washington Post on February 10th that Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons at our behest. Here is what we owe them. No, he doesn't go as far as to offer the nuclear weapons to Ukraine. Even this guy understands consequences, but guess what he comes up? He comes up with still same beaten to death cliche of that the only thing United States owes Ukraine is to prolong this war as long as possible to bleed Russia. Evidently the guy also being whatever PhD in physics, he had issues in his courses of political economy, and obviously he never studied any kind of the military strategy, let alone operational art. He still thinks that Russia is being bled. No, it's actually the other way around, as many people begin to notice. And when you you look at the situation with the economic issues, so to speak, in the West, everything becomes pretty clear. And despite the fact that, like many people like Mr. Milley and Mr. Austin, most economics professionals or experts, quote unquote, in Western media, they basically sell BS. I mean, they sell their wet fantasies and they do not understand what they are dealing with. And again, I want to repeat, they cannot calculate. They haven't been taught proper mathematics, be that in school, let alone in their degree meals, whatever they graduated in Ivy League or somewhere else. And yeah, if you go and you study economics in the West, you will not know what you're studying. You will be studying basically modern monetary theory and how to make money out of nothing. In reality, if you go back to what Mr. Medvedev stated at Omsk tank plant few days ago, which I showed you, yeah, Russia will produce thousands of tanks. Good luck, outproducing Russia in this respect. Russia outproduces combined West in terms of ammunition, in terms of missiles, and we go on and on and on. And you begin to look at it, and you have to understand that many people in Pentagon and in so-called intelligence community, they have their jaws on the floor, despite the fact I was warning them for 9 years. Don't go there. You will get your ass kicked. And they never listened. Because obviously when you study world as it is taught in the top-notch, so to speak, American or Western universities about their whatever diplomatic corps and things of this nature, you will not know shit, pardon my French. American diplomacy doesn't exist as such. It doesn't exist as the field. It's basically a collection of the people who are aggressive, who are some of them psychopaths. So, and yeah, what do you expect? Russia looks at them with the condescension, with the contempt, and that's the only thing they deserve. And again, as I already stated, they do not know how to calculate. They don't know basic math. That is why they cannot understand the order of things, that Russia can indeed and is producing thousands of tanks. And how can you explain it to them? United States doesn't produce any tanks at all. And what it tries to produce are not tanks. United States has upgrade program for M1 Abrams, but then again, how are you gonna deploy Abrams there? Sure, let it deploy to Ukraine. It will be burned as anything else. And we begin to now official rejections and debunking of the Ukrainian claims. Just look up even the British tabloid and people like Ben Wallace. I mean, this guy, the Minister of Defense of United Kingdom, he is talking about, no, we're not going to give any planes. Of course you can. You don't produce any. I mean, the whole thing was being subverted now to buy this lame duck, piece of crap, flying piece of crap F-35, while United States is desperately trying to produce something which really flies. Yes, United States used to have an excellent aerospace industry, and it used to produce some excellent combat airplanes, be that F-16, F-15, that's the pinnacle probably. This is the top, this is the summit of America's combat aircraft, but they are morally obsolete. They are not real serious contenders in the modern electronic warfare, dense and serious air forces and air defense present battlefield. They are old, plain and simple, nothing you can do about it. And you go over this across the board and you begin to understand, oh yeah, and now we have the situation with the Starlink, which I pointed out again several times, including in the beginning of this talk of mine today, that yeah, I mean, guys, look up the history of Russia. Historic Russia. Look up the history of the Soviet Union. See for yourself what is it. See for yourself how it was shaped. And then we have people who openly state, like Gilbert Doctorow, but I've been on record for extremely very many years, actually way before even 2008, where I stated again, Russian study field in the West, especially in the United States, it's a wasteland. United States doesn't have experts in Russia. It has only, quoting Margarita Simonyan of Russia Today, it only has parasites who basically leech off those grants and all those programs, and they want to say, and they will say anything those idiots in the Beltway want to hear. As a result, they make those decisions. Now United States finds itself in the trap and cornered, and it now facing their necessity to really find a way out of saving the face. Will Russia show some way for the United States to save the face? I don't know. We definitely can assume that there are serious negotiations behind the curtain, so to speak. As for Europe, Russia is not going to talk to Europe as it is now. And Mr. Lavrov today basically supported this claim when stating, yeah, we have a completely new concept of the foreign affairs now and foreign relations, and Europe is, yeah, there's nothing to talk to about there, basically. So, and when you look at all the sum of this whole thing, as we talk about this situation with the geopolitical situation, so to speak, you have to read my good friend Pepe Escobar excellent piece about Russia leading the movement to annihilate dollar, basically as we used to know it as the reserve currency. It's an excellent piece from Pepe, and he is very perceptive when he writes about these things, and he calls it Big Steve. And we know the dollar, as we know, doesn't exist anymore, and it will not exist as the only reserve currency. In fact, I'm not sure if it's going to exist as the reserve currency at all, but read this excellent piece by Pepe. And of course, Mr. Bach from the International Olympic Committee suddenly begins to say, oh my God, Thomas Bach opens door to Russian athletes competing at Paris 2024 Olympics. Look what he says. Thomas Bach, the IOC president, warned that it would be the end of international sport and Olympic Games as we know it if politicians decide who participates, and emphasize what he called our unifying mission of bringing people together. I have a news for Mr. Bach. His sport movement and international Olympic movement is dead. It was dead for many years. It was gang raped by the combined West. And fact is, so it has to be thrown at the dumpster of history as it exists today, because it's a complete crap. It's a combination of the politicians' financial interests and all those geopolitical ambitions which are embedded in the International Olympic Committee. And actually we have people there who have no honor, and many of them are just plain simple people who take bribes. So International Olympic movement is dead, and as per the doping issues, I am on record for many years now. Let them dope. Allow them to turn themselves into mutants. And I would love to see those mutants competitions, like people running 100 meters in 5.5 seconds. Hey, Usain Bolt, you won it, in totally legitimate way. Try to now win it against some mutant who took, I don't know, steroids non-stop. So yeah, let Olympic movement be that, and let it die out there. This international sport is a baloney, and this all has all hallmarks of the declining West. And this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as usual, those people who want to support me, please support me on the Patreon and support me by buying me the bottle of Jack here and there. But and I would really appreciate. I am capable of continuing with what I do largely because of my wonderful supporters. Plus, of course, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And this is pretty much what I needed to tell you today. And thank you for your attention. I'll be talking to you later. Bye-bye.